So with polishing, there's a lot of different tools and options to use. So with sanding, a lot of people ask me, what should I be starting with to sand? Typically for your average first timer, I'm gonna recommend you actually start out with a DA. Now a DA is not gonna be as fast for taking off material in a lot of situations, but a DA is gonna make it a lot easier to keep your metal planed out. So if you look at a piece like this is very flat through here. And any person that's picking up a rotary sander for the first time, they're gonna learn it takes off a lot of material really fast. Using something like this, if I were to come through here and I sand just this one spot right here up, just because it's comfortable and easy, you would think it's okay. I'm gonna sand this out here, then you come over here and do this. And if you're not overlapping properly or keeping the different stopping points, you're actually gonna start creating what I call ripples in the aluminum. And that can be really difficult to get out unless you have the experience with the DA to understand when you're gonna work that ripple out of the aluminum. So to start here, I'm gonna be starting out with 320 grit, as I said before. I believe this piece is pretty rough. The reason I'm starting with 320 is just the gouges in it and the dings. You're gonna see when I come in right here, there's a lot of deep scratches here. I personally think 320 is gonna be the most proficient way to get those out from my experience. If 320 is not the option and it does seem to be going a little slow, perfect example, I'm gonna drop down to 180 grit. And that's what's gonna keep me proficient and fast, and that's where, honestly, experience comes into play. I believe 320 should be good, but even professionals, we still make mistakes. Sometimes you have to drop a grit. It's no big deal, it's part of polishing. So right there, if you guys watched, I took my 320 grit and I went through this piece. With the 320, I was rotating at roughly about 2,800, 3,000 RPMs. The 320, I started here, and if you do see, I went to different points all through I went here. Sometimes I actually switched up directions on this. The directions was for me to, one, see how my pad is cutting, and then also on top of that, to put a little extra care into maybe a mark. Now you're gonna see me jump into my 400 grit on this. I don't really like going up and down in the position this is in. If it was on a truck, it'd be really easy, but the way it's kind of maneuvered, I'm actually gonna take my 400 and I might try to do something with diagonal. It's really gonna be one of those things I feel out as I go. So now I finished out with my 600 or 400 grit. So I know I did a good job sanding, because if you look at this, there's actually a good amount of reflection coming out of here. For the simple ease, I want to change up my sanding pattern. So now I'm going to switch over from the half moons to what we call pigtails. That would be using a DA sander. I'm going to run this DA across this and get all these half moons worked out, so I know I'm at my 800 grit with my pigtails. That way I know it's going to buff with ease. So our 800 is done. Everything to me looks perfect. It looks like we're ready to jump right into our Triple E cut with our double stitch orange buff at 3,500 RPMs. So loading the bar, there's a couple different ways to do it. Me personally, I enjoy blowing a little bit onto the buff, because when you load it, no matter what, there's gonna be some kind of excess material that's gonna come off. When you first load your buff, you're actually gonna notice you have to load it once or twice to really get that compound to sink into it. A fresh buff is gonna take more than normal. You're not gonna apply as much as you would think, but if you check it, I'm gonna show you kind of really quick on how much I add to start, and then you're gonna watch me pick it up again, probably add a little bit more. When I spray compound onto it, I like to kind of use the buff to spread it out. I'm also adding a little bit of heat into the whole panel, so that when I get up a little closer, I'm still pushing that heat up, following it, if that makes any sense. We're at 3,500 RPMs. So if you watch me go through that, I ended up cutting it twice. I always like to cut twice to get the majority of the sand marks out. Now when I come in here, now I'm gonna look at it and I can slightly see a couple little imperfections through it that might have some sand marks left. That's why I personally always go with the Q36 as my secondary, or my color bar, a lot of guys would call it. And the Q36 is actually gonna allow me to cut those marks out without putting too much color into the piece of aluminum. If you overuse the green compound, eventually you will actually start turning it white. It's more of the compound burning on the aluminum. That's why I like the Q36, because it won't do that. You can cut and cut and cut again with it, and it acts as a color rouge. And with that, I'm gonna pair it up with my yellow buff. When I color out, I'm gonna be changing my RPM from 3,500. I'm gonna go right between 26 and 22, so I'll be about 2,400 RPMs. It's also gonna help me knock down a lot of the hash. But after this Q36, it's gonna get a lot more clear and a lot more present, like a mirror. After that, you're gonna see me step into my purple finisher. And with that, that's gonna bring out the brilliance, give it that wet aluminum look, and it's gonna knock down that hashing to the most minimal state that we can. Let's get with it. So that would be our second step. That is where we use Q36 to knock it down. Now, as a polish, this is where you can make your call. Some guys, if they want to get in and out of a job, you typically could walk away from that and it be acceptable for certain customers. It at least would get rubbed down with easy red hand polish, which is where you're going to see me step to next, using a microfiber to apply it, get all that excess compound off there, help clean out any of my little scratches that are left. We're going to let it haze up a little bit. You're going to see the color change in it. Hopefully we'll be able to see that on the camera. And then that's when I'm gonna go on my finisher and do that straight up and down for that perfect finish. All right, so here I'm gonna give it a good rub down with the Easy Red spray. This is what has a lot of sealant properties in it. I like putting this on there for the simple reason it lets me see exactly where I was finishing, because finish buffing doesn't put off a lot of black. This process does take a second of time. So as a metal polisher, I like to get the most I can out of my rags. I like to fold these microfibers into 4s. I'll take my Easy Red, you give it a really good shake. This one I already have pretty shaken up. Shake it, and then you're gonna open your nozzle. You're gonna prime your rag. As a microfiber, they absorb a lot. You don't want it to absorb the liquid property and leave the abrasive property at the top. So it's good to always prime your rag a little bit. Couple sprays on there, get it nice and saturated. Come into your metal, give it a good spray. And then we're gonna nice and lightly and gingerly just go up and down in the exact motion that we're going for a finish. And you're just gonna spread this across your product or your piece. Once it's on there, I like to let it sit. If anyone watches me in the live stream or anything, you'll know this is when I start talking. I like to let this sit. Right now you're gonna see it looks really wet on there. When it gets to that real silver and there's not much reflection and it hardens up, that's when I like to buff it off, because there's no smearing action or anything like that. You don't wanna come right in and wipe it off as soon as you apply it. Already here we're starting to see that, how it's getting these dark and light areas. That's where it's starting to cure already on this piece of metal. That right there is letting me know that it's gonna come off with ease, and this product should not be smearing all over the place when you're trying to get it off of your truck. And you can see how it's all a nice silver. That's how I know I'm gonna be able to go with my purple compound at 1800 RPMs on my white flannel here. So now we're gonna come in with our purple rouge. I add just enough. These bars are a little harder. I'm not gonna be spraying it on the actual piece of metal because I have that Easy Red coating on there. When I add this, I'm gonna go just till I have a nice tint of purple on this buff from the edges through the center to the other edge. And as you can see from the rouge, it's not a lot taken off of it. So right there, you can see how great that finish is. That's a complete mirror shine. There is still a little bit of rock things, as I had said before. We weren't going for anything perfect. This is more for demonstration purposes than anything, but the clarity is there. Any guy that's driving their truck over the road is gonna be super happy with this finish. This is the finish that I would give any of my truck drivers that are doing a million miles every couple of years on their truck. They're constantly working them. This is perfect for a work truck polish, and this is what any beginner should be super happy to have laid out for them. Anyways, guys, thank you for checking in with Renegade products. Hopefully this video helps. I appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.